Welcome back, boxing fans. Chinese New Year is beginning. Congratulations for me. That means I have 11 days off, so you're going to see a lot of me over the next 11 days. And man, I just have to say thank you, Ms. Tung. What a good bonus I got this year. Damn. I was hoping to get a certain amount of bonus, thinking this would be pretty cool if I got that much. And if I got less, it'd be good, right? I wouldn't be sad about it. I got way more than I expected. Damn. It's a good thing. Money is always a pleasant thing. But let's get to this. You know, it's like they say, when one door closes, another open. So, it is what it is. When it's raining, it's pouring. So, obviously this weekend, or this week, we have big fights. Lopez versus Jermaine Ortiz is happening on a Thursday. I mean, for some people that look forward to weekend boxing, this may be disappointing. But I'm off. So, it's perfect for me. I don't mind. It's not bad at all. And it's a great way to start Chinese New Year with a big event. And this is another pretty good top-ranked card. And another card that's not pay-per-view. It makes me laugh, all these people that are so anti-Top Rank, ESPN, anti-DAZN and Matchroom, anti-Golden Boy, anti-everybody, but so pro-PBC. Yet we're still waiting to see what exactly the PBC is going to do now that they're with Amazon. And you can't expect it to be better than what we've gotten through the last 10, 15 years with Showtime, right? Because nobody expects Amazon to put as much money and support behind the PBC as Showtime did. It's just, if it happens, that would be great. You won't hear me hating. If Amazon throws buckets of cash at the PBC, beautiful. The same way I'm happy that the Saudis are throwing money to everybody, beautiful. When people throw money towards boxing, me as a boxing fan, I'm excited because it's going to mean bigger fights, bigger events for me. So that's great. And maybe not so many pay-per-views. Example, this fight today or tomorrow, whenever that's going to be, is going to be a great card. So let's just break it down. Obviously, you have the same old regular up-and-coming prospect fighters like Javier Martinez, who out of Milwaukee, I think, a guy that was really boosted out of his amateur pedigree. Right now, currently, he's 9-0-1 with 3 knockouts. He's not a guy who's really lived up to that expectation so far. 6'1", 28 years old, 72-inch reach, Milwaukee, right? He's been in with good opposition, but not great opposition, right? Not the kind of opposition that he shouldn't be beating impressively. And so far, he's shown that he's probably not that kind of fighter. So I would be surprised if Top Rank really re-signs him long term. But, maybe they see something I don't see. As well as Charlie Sheehy. Not to be confused with Charlie, you know who I mean. Charlie Sheehy, on the other hand, is doing pretty well. 8-0, 5 knockouts, right? 25 years of age. So younger, obviously another American fighter. This one, not Latin, but Caucasian, for what that matters. And so far, the level of competition he's facing is similar, right? The kind of guys you expect him to beat. The difference is he is beating them. And for the most part, impressively. He's going to be fighting a guy in Abdel Sekedo, who is 12-3 in his next fight. And for a guy with his 9th professional fight, fighting a guy with more experience and victories, that's a pretty good fight. Obviously, they're moving him forward. Who knows what to expect from him long term, but at least you can see the progression with his development. Of course, the one fighter on this card that people do have high expectations for, and justifiably so, he looks way above the level of competition he's been facing. He is kind of in a similar position to Boots Ennis, right? Boots Ennis was that kind of guy who everybody watched and knew was uber talented. The problem with Boots is that he was fighting inferior competition. So we never really saw him develop too much. We never saw him put in with the kind of competition that was going to test him or even help him become a well-rounded fighter, potentially show some of his weaknesses so he would know what to potentially work on to get better. He never had those kind of opponents. So one of the problems was at a certain point, people were thinking, this dude fucking got to step up, man. Because if he keeps doing this, who cares, right? You're going to be 32-0 and you never faced one fucking top 10 opponent yet, right? People are quick to criticize guys like Jaime Munguia and Zurdo Ramirez, but by the same time, they were world champions, right? World champions, and you can be critical of their opponents, but they were legitimate world champions. Yes, Boots is a world champion now, vacant title, and obviously we want to see him continue and move forward fighting top level competition. And now the 147-pound division is open, so it should be clear sailing for him just to go on and dominate and potentially become undisputed. And that's what I'm looking forward to. This fighter is a similar fighter, and that is Abdullah Mason. Great measurements, a guy that easily looks like he can be a 3-4 weight world champion down the road. Currently, he's 11-0 with 9 KOs. But we have to remember, he's yet to fight a 10-rounder. And that tells you about the level of competition he's been in with. If you're not fighting 10-rounders, you're not fighting quality opposition, right? You're not fighting the kind of guys who are really going to tell us what kind of fighter you really are. You're fighting guys that are levels below you, and you look sublime, as you should. Because when you fight that level of competition, you should look better than them, because you are. He's still young, right? Only 19 years of age. So expectations are tempered. No one expects him to be fighting for world championships by 2024, maybe 2025 at the end, maybe early 2026, 21, 22 years of age. Okay. Currently now he's 5'9" with a 74-inch reach. His measurements are very similar to Bud Crawford, right? And Bud obviously had far more than 12 fights by the time he fought for a world title. So if we expect Abdullah Mason to be moved similar, obviously probably a little quicker because he is getting a lot more attention than Bud Crawford got early on, we could expect him by the time he's pushing about 16-0 to be fighting for a world title. And that's not bad. I mean, that's 4, potentially 5 more fights from now. So sometime around 2025. Let me know if you think that's too soon or too slow. I think the timing is not bad, but it depends on how he beats the level of competition put in front of him. So far, this fight today or this weekend is going to be the first 8-rounder he's been in. Every other fight has been a 4-rounder or a 6-rounder. 4 to 6 round fights, right? And I'm not putting this out to hate on guys, but some people are saying that he's a better fighter at this point of his career than Lomachenko was when he became a pro. But when Lomachenko became a pro, he was fighting 12-rounders in his first fight against guys that were 28-3 and eventually against multiple weight world champions in his second fight, right? And long reigning world champions in his third fight. This guy in his 11th fight has fought only 6-rounders. Finally, now in his 12th professional fight, he's going to be fighting an 8-rounder. And you can expect him to probably fight another 3 8-rounders before potentially moving into 10-rounders. So at that point, he's probably going to be like 16-0. And now, 2025, starting to fight 10-round fights. By that time, 21 years of age, right? And 21 is young, but let's not fool ourselves. There's been plenty of world champions who are younger than 21, right? So it's not as if you're really that great of a fighter, you can't potentially be fighting for world titles. You could. A lot of it depends on who's ahead of you. If there's dominant world champions controlling the division, okay, maybe it's going to take you a little longer before you get those fights, right? Because those guys aren't going to fight you because high risk, low reward at that point. You're going to have to kind of continue to build yourself up, put yourself into mandatory position, or get the kind of fan base behind you that could really generate the fight that you and we want. As far as Abdullah Mason, though, he looks great. He's going to be fighting Benjamin Gurment, who is 8-0 with 3 KOs. So, not a bad fighter. 8 victories, 3 draws, which is a little weird in such a short amount of professional fights. I mean, what the fuck are you doing if you're fighting so many, getting so many draws early on? He's got 5 knockouts, so, it looks like he's got a little bit of power. 31 years of age, 5'9", out of Texas. So he's not going to be a smaller fighter. He's probably not going to have the long reach, though. And 2 of his draws came in his first 2 fights. So that's important to recognize as well. Obviously, at that point, he was very in the beginning of development. And his last fight, he also had a draw in a 6-rounder. His first 6-rounder, where he fought Dante Strayhorn, who was 12-4. Now, of course, he's going to fight Abdullah Mason, who is 11-0 in his first 8-rounder. So it's still the kind of opponent you expect Abdullah Mason to dominate against, right? Clearly. Definitely. But that does not diminish his progression, because we know this is a matter of progression. Also, a guy, George Acosta, is on the undercard. I'm not so familiar with George Acosta. He's 17-1, 3 knockouts, not much power, 27 years of age. He's fighting a guy in Rene Gueron, who I've heard about before, who is 18-3. Potentially that fight may be the best fight on the card, right? 2 middle of the tier type of fighters, top 50 to top 30, 2 guys that don't really have huge upside, but are both real hungry to continue to get paid. And the victory against whoever wins this fight probably means a much better payday next. So that's probably not bad. Also, this guy, Antonio Zepeda, I'm not familiar with who he is, Antonio Zepeda, but we know Zepedas tend to be tough fighters. He's a heavyweight, 6-1 with 6 KOs. His loss came in his last fight to Joshua Vargas, which doesn't speak volumes. A guy who was 3-6-2. Now he's going to fight a guy who is 3-2. So, don't have high expectations for him, even though he is a heavyweight. But obviously the biggest fights of the weekend are going to be the co-main event, Keyshawn Davis versus Jose Pedraza. I've seen some people try to downplay this fight and sort of degrade it, but I can't understand how a guy who's only had 10 or 11 fights, the same as Abdullah Mason, but yet way better competition, multiple 10-round fights, and now is going to fight, obviously, a 2-weight world champion, a guy who fought to become a 3-weight world champion multiple times against the elite competition at every single weight division he's been in. Elite competition, right? So it's not like he's fighting bums or refugees. He's fighting the best fighters in the sport. Currently, Jose Pedraza is 29-5-1, only been stopped once, and that was at 130 pounds by Tank Davis. So he's no easy work, right? 14 KOs. Obviously, right now, he's getting to the end of his career, but obviously he's still a very experienced fighter, Puerto Rican, good size, 5'8", 70.5-inch reach, and obviously great competition. When you think about his first loss, it came obviously to Gervonta Tank Davis. Prior to that, he'd already beaten Stephen Smith, Liam Smith and Callum Smith's brother, Edner Cherry, and Andre Klimov, right, and Michael Ferenas. So he fought good competition, and then obviously lost to Tank Davis by 7th round TKO. Jumped back with a couple of fights, beating Antonio Moran, Raymond Beltran to become a world champion, and then unified against Lomachenko, losing that fight. Beat Antonio Lozado, who was 42-1, then moved up in weight to fight Jose Zepeda. Lost the decision to him. Then beat Michel Lepierre, Hevio Molina, Julian Rodriguez, who at the time was 21-0, undefeated, and was getting a lot of praise. Since that loss, he's been done. Then obviously fought Carlos Ramirez, the unified champion, losing unanimous decision to him. Fought Richard Comey, had a draw with him, and just lost to Arnold Barboza in his last fight, another unanimous decision, and now is fighting Keyshawn Davis. So for Keyshawn Davis, this is the kind of fight you can make a statement. If you were able to stop Petraza, that's a fucking huge accomplishment. An accomplishment that world champions, unified world champions at 140 pounds weren't able to do. That, pound for pound king Lomachenko wasn't able to do. So, I don't expect that Keyshawn Davis is going to do that. But the reality of the situation is, if he did, that would be kind of like Jaime Munguia's big victory against John Ryder in his last fight, doing what Canelo Alvarez wasn't able to do. For Keyshawn Davis, as I said, right now this is going to be his 10th professional fight. He's had less professional fights than Abdullah Mason. Less. 9 wins, 6 knockouts, no losses, no draws. 24 years of age, 5'9", 70 and a 70-inch reach. So he's going to be giving a little bit of a reach up to Petraza. They're about the same height, and obviously he's probably about 10 years younger. And already in his career, he's fought a very good level of competition. Early on, he fought Juan Carlos Burgos, then he fought Anthony Can You Dig It Yigit, Francesco Patera, and of course, Nahir Albright in his last fight. And now, obviously, Jose Petraza now. And 5 guys in his last 5 fights, quality opposition. And even the people he fought before that. Esteban Sanchez was 18-1. Omar Bahena was 25-5. He fought Richard Ashley, who was 10-1 early on in his career. And then, a guy who was 7-4, 8-3-1, and 4-2-3. So for the most part, most of the guys he fought have been winners, right? Not losers, not guys who were perennial losers, but guys that were winners, right? So I look forward to that fight. I think it's a tough fight. I would not be shocked or surprised if Petraza pulled out the victory. I wouldn't be shocked. But at the same time, I would not be surprised to see Keyshawn Davis look fucking great, right? Because sometimes these are the kind of fights, these are the kind of opponents that really make you show your best, right? It brings out the best in you. And the one thing we know about Petraza, he's not afraid to let his hands go on the inside, which can make him vulnerable, right? You can get outworked, you can get hit too much, but obviously he's coming down in weight now, so he's not giving up the size advantage that he did when he was at 140. Now he's going to be the same size as Keyshawn. Obviously he's not going to be as fast as Keyshawn, but he's far more experienced. He's a very good boxer on the outside, and also he's scrappy on the inside, right? He's a guy who's versatile and can mix it up. He doesn't have to fight in one style, which is important for a young guy like Keyshawn Davis, because most of the guys he's faced so far are pretty one-dimensional, not the kind of guys who are going to give him too many different looks, right? Guys that you can go into training camp with, know what style they're going to fight, and you can prepare specifically for that style. Petraza is a little bit of a different puzzle to solve. He can change. He can change within a fight. So it'll be interesting to see how that fight unfolds. It's a pretty damn good fight. And my prediction is Keyshawn Davis by unanimous decision. And then, of course, we have the main event, Teofimo Lopez. Tio's all over the place, man. He's doing interviews with everybody. He was on, what is it? With Paulie Malignaggi and those guys. How come I can't remember? The boxing channel on YouTube. They have their own app, and you can watch Wednesday night fights. Well, why is it fucking escaping me? But he was on there doing a big interview with those guys. I think his forthright attitude and his maturity definitely impressed Paulie Malignaggi and the boys quite a bit. I think what Lopez says is totally true. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to play out the way he thinks it will or the way he hopes it will. But I definitely think the things he says are accurate. From day one, I've said right from the beginning, he reminds me a lot of Fernando Vargas, right? A guy that can talk, a guy that can get people's attention because of his attitude and the things he has to say. Obviously had very good amateur pedigree, and a guy who is really impressing in the pros, right? Impressive performances. impressive performances, and a guy who really, truthfully, should be the first 2-weight undisputed champion. He beat Lomachenko. That was for undisputed, regardless of what the politics of boxing did and how they fucked everything up. It's unfortunate. The WBC dropped that fucking ball. If they would never have given Devin Haney that title and would have just allowed Lomachenko to keep it instead of muddying the waters, which was something they did, right? And then promised him something that they did not deliver, Lopez would have been the undisputed champion. It would have been as easy as that. 1, 2, 3. And who knows what would have happened afterwards, right? Maybe we wouldn't have had to wait so long before he fought George Kambosos. And then maybe we would have got the Devin Haney fight between them. The reality is things stretched out, unfolded the way they did, and it was a bad look for him. And people still hold that Kambosos loss against him, as you should, because it shows some sort of vulnerability mentally with him. The fact that he's kind of like Mike Tyson was in his prime, a little bipolar, hot and cold, right? He can be really high or low, right? Which is obviously this kind of mental issues that many of boxers today have and talk about, whereas obviously historically boxers had the same issue, but nobody ever talked about it. You just fucking dug in and got to work, right? That's what you do as a man. You don't moan and groan. You don't fucking cry in your pillow. You fucking bite down and fucking move forward, right? And that's historically what men always did. It may not have been the healthiest thing, which is why men generally die faster than women because of all this suppression they keep inside of them. But historically, that's what we did. Obviously, today it's a new world, so we're getting a lot more of this mental illness being sort of popping out where usually it wasn't. And Lopez has shown that vulnerability. So I think a lot of fans sort of think, the physicality, the explosiveness, the skill set, it's there, right? People were super impressed the first part of the fight against Lomachenko and super impressed with his performance against Taylor. But people still have questions, right? And obviously a guy like Jermaine Ortiz, a quality fighter, really solid, right? A guy who obviously sparred with Lomachenko, beat Jamal Herring, sent him into retirement. Herring has since come back, but it shows you the kind of quality of opponent that Ortiz is. That post-fight, Herring quit. After some thinking about it and being around the sport, he chose to come back. But Jermaine Ortiz is no joke, right? And we saw that with his performance against Lomachenko. He can switch it up. He obviously sparred with Lomachenko and knew what to expect and was able to adapt far easier than a lot of fighters are to Lomachenko, right? He adapted better than Devin Haney did, right? And I think a lot of people would agree with that. But obviously came to the wrong side of that decision. And since then has been a little inactive, hasn't been given the opportunities, has been struggling to make weight. And obviously now here's his big opportunity. If he can knock Lopez off this pedestal at 140, he's putting himself right in line for Ryan Garcia fights, Devin Haney fights, Subriel Matias fights, Tank Davis fights. Who knows, right? Who knows what the possibility are for him if he beats Lopez. But obviously beating Lopez is a huge name. And similar to Kambosos and how he was able to sort of cash out on that victory, for Jermaine Ortiz, it may be a similar situation. So motivationally, he's motivated. He's ready. And he's hungry, as he should be. For Lopez, he's talking a great game, right? His confidence, his focus, his hunger. Obviously, his kid is older and he's sort of a little more mature now. He got married, young, brash, now divorced so quick, right? And I think, a lot of that turmoil that he had to deal with helped him mature a little bit and understand the world, right? And really what he probably should focus on more and where his energy should go. And hopefully that transitions or is shown in his boxing performances. He says that he's going to get rid of Ortiz inside 4 rounds. And if he does that, that is a sensational fucking performance. I will call it now. If Lopez gets rid of Jermaine Ortiz in under 4 rounds, that is a fucking sensational performance. Sensational. Nobody would predict that. In my prediction league, I did not predict that. I'm predicting a fucking 9th round TKO. But to get rid of him that early, right? That's super impressive. It's kind of like when we saw Danny Jacobs fight the Cuban guy who ducked fucking Golovkin. And people were really hyped about that fight. It was getting a lot of attention, and Danny Jacobs knocked him out in 1 round. It's kind of like when Lopez fought Comey, and people were stoked about that fight too. It was Lopez's first world title opportunity against Comey, a guy who's never been knocked out, right? A guy that showed a great chin and great power, and every fight he lost was by split decision. And then to get fucking knocked the fuck out as quick as he did against Lopez, that was impressive. Impressive. And that's really what started to shine a real light on Lopez for real boxing fans. They're like, damn, this kid's for real. So if he's able to do that against Jermaine Ortiz, I'll be super impressed. Already, I think he's the number 1 fighter at 140 pounds. Devin Haney, number 2. But when you talk about my prediction for that fight, I favor Devin Haney to beat him, stylistically. Devin Haney is a slick boxer. Lopez is a boxer puncher. Boxer punchers generally don't beat boxers, right? Usually the guys that beat boxers are more pressure fighters, more of a guy like, say, Subriel Matias, right, who will pressure him more. Non-stop body work, non-stop work. If he's not able to stun that guy with something and get his respect, he's going to fucking have that dude in his chest all night long, beating the shit out of him, right? A guy like Lopez would probably have more success against Matias. Probably. Of course, these are just based on styles. I mean, it doesn't determine the hunger, the real quality and levels, because we know there's levels to this. You can say styles make fights, but even in saying that, there's definite levels, right? A style that shouldn't beat this style will easily beat that style because the fighter is just way better, right? Way better. And the style won't come in to be that much of an impact in this situation. With Lopez, Ortiz, I'm really curious. I think this could easily be a banana peel for Ortiz. Easily. But if he's able to make a true statement, it's definitely going to propel him where he says he wants to go. He's talking about a Bud Crawford fight. I'd love to see that. Because think about it. As I said, he should be an undisputed champion in 2 weight divisions. Before Crawford, before Nui. And people go, oh, you're just being racist. No, what do you mean being racist? How am I being racist? You got a fucking Latino fighter, an Asian fighter, and a black fighter. And I'm not disregarding or disrespecting anybody. I'm just saying if we're being fucking honest and truthful, Lopez should have done it first. It doesn't disregard Crawford or Nui doing it. It's not a fucking race, right? The reality is 2, 3 fighters, maybe 4 with with Usyk, potentially could do that. And that's great, right? Let's just revel in what boxers are doing now, trying to prove they're the best by becoming undisputed. That's what we should expect all fighters to do. And that should be some of the negativity we throw towards guys like Tank Davis and others who aren't interested in doing that, don't want to unify, don't want to fight the best. And that's where the criticism comes from. Obviously, he beat Josh Taylor, who was undefeated and was the undisputed champion. So him beating him, again, should have been undisputed at 130. If he now goes up to 147, he also won't be considered a 3-weight world champion undisputed because Crawford currently only has 3 of the titles. The other one was obviously stripped and given to Boots Ennis. But we know Crawford is the undisputed champion. Nobody's beaten him. And if he challenges Crawford and puts himself in that position, win, lose, or draw, you gotta fucking respect the dude, man, for fighting Lomachenko when nobody gave him a chance to win. Fighting Josh Taylor. The only reason anybody gave him a chance to win is because Josh Taylor hadn't looked good in his previous fight, right, against Cottrell. But everybody thought Lopez was fucking mental, right? And nobody was confident that he would be able to beat Taylor, even though Taylor didn't look good against Cottrell. Now you throw him in with Bud Crawford? What are you, fucking mental? What do you want the kid to get killed? Right? That's going to be people's perspective. But let's be 100% true. That's what people said to Muhammad Ali when he faced Liston. That's what people said to Muhammad Ali when he fought Foreman. People literally thought Liston and Foreman were going to kill Ali, kill him, right? That's how lopsided people expected those fights to be. Liston had dominated and destroyed Floyd Patterson, beat his ass around the ring like a fucking ragdoll. And Ali was a kid out of the Olympics, talked a lot of shit, looked great, but hadn't fought that level of competition. And went in there and showed that this shit ain't competitive, because fucking Liston is way too slow to deal with fucking Ali's foot speed and hand speed. And Ali beat his ass like fucking he was his daddy. And then when he faced Foreman, that was the true fucking brain fucking destroyer. Because he wasn't that young fighter anymore. He'd been inactive because of the whole Vietnam situation. He'd lost to Frazier. He'd lost to Norton. He looked vulnerable. Whereas Foreman destroyed Frazier, destroyed Norton. Like, he could have beat those two guys on the same fucking night in the ring together. That's how dominant his performances were against them. He literally beat the piss out of both of those guys. And then, of course, now here's Ali, fatter, older, can't move the same as he once was. You know, doesn't float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Rumble, young man, rumble. Oh, no, that guy was gone, right? No longer the same fighter. Yet Ali was so in his head. Mentally fucking broke him before the fight even began. So then when he got in there and started just beating on fucking Ali, and Ali just keep taking it, landing on the shots, taking the body, taking it all. At a certain time, Foreman fucking was getting disturbed that he couldn't hurt this guy. And he was getting tired, mentally and physically. And then Ali opened up on him and fucking knocked him out. Unbelievable. And I'm not saying Lopez is going to do that to Bud Crawford, because if I was to predict, I definitely would not make that prediction. But that's what people were saying about Ali in those situations. So while we don't believe it's going to happen, doesn't mean it couldn't. And unbelievably so. Nobody thought Buster Douglas was going to go to Japan and fucking knock out Mike Tyson. But he did, right? I mean, if he just goes in there with fucking Crawford, is competitive with Crawford, goes 12 rounds with Crawford, and shows that this fight was really worth making. Even if he loses, people are going to be like, damn, he's for real. He went to his legitimate third weight division and fought the best guy in every single division. Loma, Taylor, Crawford. And that shit's fucking unbelievable. So I'm hoping that fight gets done. He said it's probably not going to happen until 2025. I hope earlier, because the truth is Crawford's probably going to be at 154 by that time. So if you could do that fight earlier, if the Spence fight isn't going to happen, then you throw Crawford in with Lopez, put that on pay-per-view. That fight is fucking dynamite. And you don't even need to deal with fucking Bob Arum and Top Rank. Deal with the Saudis, right? Say, let's do it with them. The Saudis, to do that fight, I'm sure they'd be down with it, because that's a great fight. Marketable. One guy who's going to sell it verbally, the other guy who's just a huge legacy fighter in Bud Crawford. So, anything is possible, as the great Kevin Garnett used to say. But leave your comments below. What do you think about this card tomorrow? What are your predictions? Do you think Keyshawn Davis beats Petraza? Do you think Petraza has any chance? Do you think Lopez beats Ortiz, Jermaine Ortiz? Or do you think Ortiz has a possibility of beating and upsetting the apple cart? Let me know in the comment section below. Thanks for watching. Peace out. Enjoy your weekend. I'll be enjoying my Chinese New Year.